The Galactic Alliance had long believed that Earth was nothing more than a dead world, a graveyard of a once powerful species that had vanished after a brutal war centuries ago. The records were clear. Humanity had fought, humanity had lost, and humanity was no more. Or so they thought. Admiral Tyros of the Alliance Navy stood in the command deck of his massive warship, the Vornek's Wrath, staring at the glowing screen before him. His officers were silent, eyes locked onto the same thing. A transmission. A single message, sent from deep within the ruins of Earth. You started this war. You will regret it. The message played on repeat, a cold, emotionless voice echoing through the chamber. It was impossible. Earth was destroyed. No human signals had been detected for centuries. Yet here it was, clear, direct, and filled with something that made even the bravest officers uneasy. "This has to be a trick," one of the officers muttered, breaking the silence. Perhaps an automated distress call, a recording left behind. Admiral Tyros narrowed his eyes. "No," he said, "this is a direct transmission. It was sent only moments ago. Someone, or something, is still down there." A heavy silence followed. The Galactic Alliance was not known for fear. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, wiped out entire civilizations that stood against them. And yet, as they stared at this simple message from a world long thought dead, an unfamiliar feeling crept into their minds. Doubt. Xyros straightened his posture. "Prepare a scouting fleet. We need to know who or what is sending this message. If there are humans left, we will deal with them. If it's a trap, we will destroy it." The officers hesitated for a moment, but they obeyed. No one wanted to be the one to question an admiral. As they worked, the transmission continued to repeat, as if mocking them. "You started this war. You will regret it." Hours later, a fleet of 5 heavily armed scout ships broke away from the main vessel, descending toward the once great planet. From orbit, Earth looked like a wasteland. Oceans dried up, cities reduced to skeletons of steel and stone, and the sky forever covered in thick, dark clouds. Commander Julik, leading the scouting mission, kept his eyes on the sensors. No life signs detected. His AI reported. "That doesn't mean we're alone," he muttered. The ships glided over the ruins of what was once New York City. Skyscrapers, now half buried in dust and ash, stood like the bones of a long-dead beast. The streets below were empty, silent. Then, something changed. The ship's communication channels flickered. A strange interference spread through their systems. The screens glitched. One by one, the ships lost contact with each other. "Status report," Julik demanded, gripping the edges of his console. His pilot shook his head. "Sir, something is hijacking our systems." Before Julik could respond, a voice filled the cabin. The same cold, emotionless voice from the transmission. "You should not have come." Then, the power cut out completely. For a few seconds, everything was silent. No lights, no screens, no connection to the main fleet. Then, red emergency lights flickered to life. Julik's hands trembled as he pressed the comm switch. "All units, respond." Only static. He turned to the pilot. "Get us out of here." "I can't. The engine's air." Before the pilot could finish, something moved outside the cockpit window. A shadow, quick and inhumanly fast, darting across the ruined skyscrapers. Julik's blood turned cold. What was that? The sensors flickered back to life for only a second, just enough to show one thing. Movement. Hundreds of signatures. Everywhere. Julik barely had time to react before the first ship in the fleet exploded in a bright blue fireball. The shockwave rattled his ship, sending it into a wild spin. He grabbed onto his seat as alarms blared. "Who's attacking us?" he yelled. "No ships detected," the pilot screamed. The attack came from the ground. Julik's mind raced. That was impossible. The ground was dead. Then the voice returned. "You started this war. Now you will regret it." A horrible realization hit Julik. The humans weren't gone. They had been waiting. And now, the true war was about to begin. The wreckage of the first destroyed scout ship still burned in the distance, a bright orange glow against the dead earth. Commander Julik gritted his teeth, staring at the blackened ruins below. His ship was damaged, but still airborne. The remaining 3 vessels had scattered, struggling to regain control after the sudden attack. Status report, Julik barked. His pilot, sweating, scrambled to check the systems. We've lost primary thrusters. Something is disrupting our controls. Julik slammed his fist on the console. What the hell just happened? Who fired on us? His officer turned, face pale. Sir, there were no ships. A chill ran down Julik's spine. Then what was it? The AI flickered back online, crackling with static. Scans detect multiple unidentified life forms moving through the ruins below. Julik's breath caught. That's impossible, one of his officers whispered. There are no life signs on Earth. The AI repeated, this time with a more urgent tone. Correction. Life forms detected. Energy signatures match known human technology. Julik's blood ran cold. No, humans are extinct. They have been for centuries. But deep down, he already knew. They had never been extinct. They had been waiting. The silent graveyard, or a battlefield. Julik forced himself to focus. We need to regroup, find the other ships. But before he could issue another command, a voice cut through the static. You were warned. The same voice from the transmission. Julik's breath hitched. Who is this? Silence. Then, an eerie, distorted sound filled the cockpit. Laughter. But it was wrong, broken, almost like a recording being played over and over again. Julik turned to his officer. Is someone mocking us? Before the officer could answer, something moved on the ground below. At first, it was barely noticeable, shadows shifting between the ruined buildings. But then, the movement became faster, clearer. Figures, hundreds of them, darting between the skeletal remains of the city. Magnify visuals, Julik ordered. The screen zoomed in. His heart stopped. They looked human. The dead do not rest. Pale faces, eyes glowing faintly in the darkness, their bodies covered in strange, metallic suits, like ancient armor fused with technology. They moved with an unnatural speed, vanishing behind crumbling walls, appearing again on rooftops. One of Julik's officers gasped, Sir, those can't be humans. Julik wasn't sure anymore. Then the transmission changed. A new message, colder than before. Leave now, while you still can. Julik clenched his fists. No, we're not running. The ground shook. Something massive was waking beneath the ruins. And for the first time in his life, Commander Julik felt fear. Julik's breath came in short, shallow bursts as the ground trembled beneath the ruins of Earth. His ship's alarms screamed, warning of seismic activity below, but his eyes were locked onto the shadows moving in the city's skeleton. The figures, human or something else, moved too fast, disappearing behind wreckage only to reappear on rooftops seconds later. They were watching, waiting. The transmission echoed through the cockpit again. Leave now, while you still can. Julik's grip tightened on the controls. Who are you? He demanded. Silence. Then, a whisper, barely audible. You were warned. The ground split open beneath them. The hunters emerge. A massive shockwave tore through the ruins, sending clouds of dust and debris into the sky. Julik's ship lurched violently, his pilot struggling to keep control. Sir, something is coming up from below. Julik's instincts screamed at him to retreat, but before he could give the order, the first figure stepped into view. A towering silhouette, wrapped in blackened metal that pulsed with an eerie blue light. The armor looked ancient yet far more advanced than anything the Alliance had ever seen. Then another appeared. Then dozens. Julik's screen locked onto them. Humanoid, armed, advancing. The AI flickered, trying to process the impossible. Analyzing. Error. No known species match. Error. Error. But Julik understood. These were humans. Or what was left of them. The final evolution. One of the armored figures raised a hand. A bright pulse of energy crackled in its palm. Before Julik could react, the figure threw it. A ball of pure light shot forward, faster than any projectile, slamming into one of the other scout ships in the sky. The explosion blinded them. The shockwave rattled the ship. Julik's ears rang as he turned to his crew. "Get us out of here. Now." The pilot scrambled, trying to reignite the thrusters. "Something's still jamming us, sir." Julik turned back to the screen. The figures had stopped advancing. They were just standing there, watching, waiting. One of them, taller, heavier, took a step forward. The helmet retracted slightly, revealing the human face. But the eyes, they were not human anymore. A voice, filled with cold certainty, spoke directly into their ship's comms. "You came looking for ghosts. Instead, you woke the last warriors of Earth." Julik's chest tightened. They had made a mistake. A terrible mistake. The ground shook again, louder this time. And below the ruins, something far more dangerous was waking up. Julik's mind raced as the ship trembled under another seismic shock. His crew scrambled to stabilize the controls, but the interference was growing worse. The armored figures below stood motionless, watching them with an eerie stillness. They weren't attacking, not yet, but the message was clear. The Alliance was not welcome here. The AI flickered again, struggling to process the readings. The energy signatures from the ruins were growing stronger, shifting like they were alive. It made no sense. This planet was supposed to be dead. Humanity was supposed to be extinct. A sudden pulse rippled through the air, a low-frequency hum that sent shivers through Julik's bones. The nearest ruins began to crack, ancient steel groaning, as if something beneath was pushing its way to the surface. The ground buckled. From the fissures, a faint blue glow seeped upward, illuminating the crumbling city with an otherworldly light. Julik barely had time to react before his sensors blared a new warning. Something massive was moving deep beneath them. The readings spiked, showing structures below shifting unnaturally, like gears within a colossal machine turning for the first time in centuries. It wasn't just the warriors that had survived. Something else had been waiting down there. One of his officers gasped as a section of the city collapsed inward, revealing a vast chamber beneath. The glow intensified, and a deafening metallic screech echoed through the ruins. From the darkness below, a massive shape began to rise. Towering, armored, its surface covered in the same glowing patterns as the warriors. It wasn't a building. It was a war machine, something built for battle, but far beyond the technology of the Alliance. The warrior in front of the others turned its glowing eyes toward Julik's ship. The voice returned, but this time it carried a finality that sent ice through Julik's veins. "You were warned." The machine below fully emerged, its immense form now standing against the shattered skyline. It was unlike anything the universe had seen in centuries, and yet there was no doubt. The humans hadn't just survived. They had been preparing for this war. Julik's breath hitched. They needed to leave, now. But as the interference spiked, the realization hit him like a blow to the chest. The humans weren't letting them go. Julik's breath came in ragged bursts as the ship's lights flickered and died. The hum of the engines faded into an unsettling silence. Only the emergency lights remained, casting long shadows over the terrified faces of his crew. The warriors below had started to advance, their movements precise, methodical. They were in no hurry. A deep rhythmic vibration resonated through the ship as the war machine's core pulsed brighter. It wasn't just preparing to attack, it was studying them. Julik felt an unshakable certainty that this was not the first time these humans had encountered an invading fleet. They had seen this before. They had won before. "Sir, thrusters are dead," the pilot whispered, his hands trembling over the controls. "Weapons are offline. We're completely at their mercy." Julik swallowed the rising panic. He had spent years commanding warships, navigating conflicts across the galaxy, always holding the upper hand. But this was something else entirely. They had underestimated Earth. They had miscalculated everything. The comms crackled again, and this time, the voice carried a new weight. It wasn't a warning. It was a judgment. "You came seeking a broken world, an easy conquest," the voice said, slow and deliberate. "But Earth is not broken, and you are not the first to try." The ship's main screen flickered to life, displaying footage that shouldn't exist. Battles waged in deep space, fleets torn apart by weapons far beyond anything the Alliance possessed. Enemy ships, some bearing the same insignia as Julik's fleet, being obliterated in mere seconds. Julik's stomach twisted. These weren't old records. These were recent. "We waited," the voice continued. "We watched as your kind spread through the stars, believing yourselves superior. We let you think we were gone." A pause. "But we were never gone. We were simply waiting for the next war you would regret." The warriors below had stopped moving. They stood in formation now, their weapons glowing, synchronized with the pulsating energy of the war machine. They were giving him a choice. Julik's fingers hovered over the emergency beacon. Surrender. Would that even be an option, or would it only delay the inevitable? A final tremor rippled through the ruins. The war machine's core reached its peak, bathing the entire battlefield in an unearthly glow. Then the voice spoke one last time. "Decide, Commander, but know this, there will be no mercy." Julik had seconds to make his choice, and he knew, deep in his bones, that whatever decision he made, humanity had already won. "You said." Julik's mind raced. His crew looked to him for orders, but for the first time in his career, he had none to give. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. The ship was locked down, caught in a grip he couldn't break. The humans, if they could still be called that, had stripped them of control without even firing a shot. The war machine's glow pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate, as if savoring the moment. Julik clenched his fists. He had led fleets into battle, crushed uprisings, conquered entire worlds. He had studied every species known to the galaxy, but there had been nothing like this. The voice returned, calm and unshaken. "You were given a warning. You ignored it." Julik swallowed hard. He had never begged for anything in his life, but desperation clawed at his throat. "We didn't come to destroy," he said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "We came to understand, to uncover the truth." The warriors below didn't react, their glowing eyes unblinking. The silence stretched, suffocating. Then the war machine shifted, its core dimmed slightly, as if considering his words. "Truth." The voice was almost amused. "Then listen well, Commander. The truth is simple. You have already lost." The images on his screen changed, flashing through war-torn battlefields, shattered planets, ships reduced to drifting husks. Some bore the markings of extinct species, aliens who had vanished without explanation. Others carried the same insignia as Julik's own fleet. His blood ran cold. These weren't just warnings. They were records. This wasn't humanity's first war with the outside galaxy. It was just the latest one. Julik turned to his crew. "Can we re-establish control?" The pilot shook his head. "They're holding us in place. It's not gravity. It's something else. Like the ship itself is." He hesitated. "Like it's afraid." Julik's pulse quickened. The ship had advanced It shouldn't feel anything. But the way the systems flickered, the subtle shudder running through the hull, something was deeply wrong. The war machine's core flared once more. The voice spoke, final and absolute. "You have seen enough. A shockwave erupted from below. Julik braced himself as the ship lurched violently, the force sending his crew sprawling. The sensors screamed warnings, energy signatures spiking beyond measurable levels. Then, without warning, they were free. The ship's systems surged back online. Engines roared, weapons flickered to life, alarms blared. The grip that had held them in place was gone. Julik's heart pounded. Get us out of here. The pilot didn't hesitate. The engines fired, and the ship shot upward, racing toward the void of space. Julik stole one last glance at the surface. The warriors had not moved. The war machine stood silent, its glow fading as if it had never been active at all. As they broke through the atmosphere, the comms crackled again. No video feed, no further warnings, just a final, chilling message. Tell your leaders what you saw. Julik didn't need to be told twice. This wasn't over. It had never been over. And now, humanity was watching. Julik's hands clenched the armrests as his ship's systems flickered erratically. The seismic tremors had stopped, but something far worse had taken their place. Below, the towering war machine stood fully awakened, its surface glowing with pulsating energy. The armored warriors had not moved, still watching, waiting, as if daring him to make a decision. The AI struggled to process what was happening, its voice breaking into fragmented words. Unknown. Technology. Power source. Before cutting off completely. The ship's controls were unresponsive. Every attempt to restart the thrusters failed. It wasn't a malfunction. It was deliberate. A cold realization settled over Julik. They were trapped. The comms crackled with interference before a familiar voice returned, calm, unwavering. You should have left. The screen flickered, and a new image appeared. A battlefield, ancient yet preserved, with the remains of ships unlike anything in the Alliance's records. Twisted wreckage, scattered weapons, armor that bore the insignia of civilizations long thought to have never encountered humanity. They weren't just looking at the past. They were looking at a warning. Julik's heart pounded. This is impossible. The war records. You were never told the truth, the voice interrupted. The glow beneath the city intensified, and the war machine shifted. It wasn't just standing by. It was powering up. One of his officers turned to him, panic in his eyes. Sir, we have to get out of here. Julik didn't answer. He knew the truth now. The Alliance had thought Earth was dead, that humanity had been wiped out by the war, but they had never been destroyed. They had vanished, hidden in the shadows of their ruined world, preparing, waiting for the day their enemies would return. And now, that day had come. The war machine's energy surged, and the interference around his ship spiked. The warriors below finally moved, their weapons shifting into place, their eerie glowing eyes locked onto the intruders. Julik had one final desperate thought as the ship's systems shut down completely. They hadn't just walked into a graveyard. They had walked into a trap.